What's up guys, in today's video we're going to talk about some of the fundamentals of bicep and tricep training, what exercises you should be using in your session, along with how you can minimize the risk of injury. I'm talking about elbow injury because that's very common when it comes to training arms. So let's take a quick look at the bicep and tricep muscles themselves. It's very important that we understand where the muscles originate from and where they insert at. Okay, so let's look at the biceps. Originating somewhere here and inserting somewhere down here, okay? And I want you to visualize an invisible line between the origin point and the insertion point. This is very important because that is basically the direction at which the muscle fibers are aligned. And it's very important that we know this because whenever we're training, we want to try and align these muscle fibers in the same direction at which the force is being pulled or generated from, okay? So let's take, for example, gravity. Gravity is pulling directly downwards to the ground. So if we want to get maximum efficiency when it comes to doing any kind of bicep training, we need to line up this invisible line with the force of gravity. So something like that, okay? I'm over-exaggerating, but basically you want that invisible line to be pointing directly downwards from the origin point to the insertion point. And this is very important because a lot of people, if you just stand them upright and see how they are naturally positioned, there's going to be some people that can just naturally stand like this, okay? But there's other people who will naturally just stand like that, and you can see the elbows are flared. You will see that if they were just to curl naturally and comfortably, it would look something like this. So they're going to have to be quite specific with the exercises they choose in order to maximize the efficiency of bicep training. And the same thing goes for triceps as well. If that person was to try and force themselves to use an easy bar, straight barbell, or a single bar attachment, it's going to force them to go in a very awkward position, okay? Because obviously, especially with the barbell or any kind of straight bar attachment, they'll have to force themselves to get to a maximum supinated position, which is going to feel really awkward for them, not only at the shoulder joint but the elbow joint as well. And if they continue to go through the motion of curling in a very, very awkward position for them, it's going to cause quite a lot of stress at the elbow joint. Now, when it comes to my training, you'll see me, or you will have seen me, doing easy bar curls and straight bar curls. Now, the reason why I do continue to do these exercises is because I don't have any elbow pain, and I feel like I can get myself quite naturally into the position whereby I can align the fibers up with the forces of gravity. However, this has been working okay for me over the past 10 years, but as I get into my 30s, it may be a little bit more of an issue because obviously I'm getting older, the joints are getting a little bit stiffer, and I do want to be able to continue to lift for as long as possible. So that being the case, you might be asking, okay then, well, what are the alternatives? What are the safer forms of curling, which is going to allow me to grow my biceps to the size that I want them to? And the answer to that is pretty simple. It's just going to be a combination of different dumbbell exercises and cable exercises, which is just going to allow you to go through a more natural range of motion. You could also do a cable bicep curl. This one's got the advantage of really overloading the bicep in the lengthened position because of the direction in which the cable is pulling at the bottom of the movement. You can do one arm or you can do two arms. Personally, I like to do one arm at a time because it just allows me to really focus all of my concentration on that one arm which is working. You could also, if you wanted to, do both arms at the same time. So if you positioned yourself standing in the middle of the crossover station, because of the way the cables are set up, it's going to allow a great degree of freedom in terms of how you actually move the cables themselves. So you can line it up to how you would naturally line up the fibers of your biceps, and you can maintain that alignment throughout the entire rep. Another really good exercise you can do, which is pretty much suitable for everyone, is a single arm preacher curl. Now, with this one, you've got the added benefit of everything really being locked in place. Nothing is moving. There's no protraction or retraction of the shoulder joint. I am locked in position. And you'll notice when I'm doing this variation, I am twisting throughout the movement. Why am I doing it? To be honest with you, I'm just mixing it up. The truth is, if you really want to get the maximum shortening of the bicep, you do want to end up in the supinated position at the top of the movement. However, you will see me, and you're going to continue to see me, doing different variations of curls with different grips. And you may argue that this is not going to be optimal for maximum bicep development, but the reasons why I do it is to also build up other areas in my arm. So doing a lot of curls with a pronated or neutral grip is going to help build up some forearm strength and thickness as well. So I'm going to vary things to build the overall strength and aesthetics of my arm as a whole, not just the biceps. And you could also argue that if you're continuously curling in the supinated position again and again and again, the risk of you getting some form of repetitive strain injury is going to be a lot higher compared to if your bicep programming included exercises which are going to incorporate different grips and overloading the strength curve at different points and using things like cables and free weights and so on. So when it comes to tricep training, again, we've got similar issues which we may potentially have with bicep training, and that is how someone is naturally set up. So if somebody naturally, when standing upright, the elbows are flared, whenever they're doing any kind of skull crush or tricep extension, you're placing yourself into a very awkward position where potentially you could be doing the reps like that, where you flare the elbows, and you get an inefficient contraction of the triceps. You're not going through a full range of motion, you've got a lot of stress on your elbows and you're going to ruin your elbows. So ideally we want to find exercises where we can naturally go like this, or like that, okay? Because if you've ever done an overhead extension with dumbbells or skull crush, you'll find that a lot of people just flare the elbows massively. So it's going to be much more efficient if you can find something which is going to naturally go through the same plane of motion. So a really good exercise you could do is a standing cable crossover, where you're literally just holding the balls instead of using an attachment at all. And you can see the way I've positioned myself, the angle and the direction at which my tricep fibers are lined up are in exactly the same direction at which the cable is. Okay, so maximum efficiency here. We're getting less aggravation on the elbow joint, and we're also allowed to go through a full range of motion. So you can see at the bottom of the movement, I'm really shortening the tricep, and at the top, I'm lengthening it as much as I possibly can do while still keeping the tension. Another great exercise you can do is using the rope. Now, ideally, you want to use a long rope or two ropes put together, because this allows you to go through a greater range of motion. The short rope still works because the rope is lined up in the same direction at which the tricep fibers are. However, you're just restricted with how much you can shorten the tricep. So you're going to be much better off if you just find either a long rope or use two long ropes. And then you can manipulate the exercise by either changing the height of the attachment itself or changing the angle of your torso, so you're going to be overloading different points in the strength curve. Now, a very popular tricep exercise is the lying skull crushers. Now, obviously, an easy bar or straight bar is out of the question. Dumbbells you could technically do, but really it's going to be dependent upon the individual. If you can keep your elbows tucked in, keep everything tight, and go through the range of motion like this, that's fine. But if you really struggle to keep your elbows tucked in, you find yourself doing that. Look how much movement there is at the elbow here. This probably isn't going to be the best variation for you, so you're probably better off you do one dumbbell at a time. Get yourself into this position, maybe move your head slightly to the side, come down, lengthen the tricep, and then come back up. Not all the way up to the top, because we're just resting at this point. Just to about here whilst there's still tension. All the way down and up. Like with the biceps, I'm going to vary up most of the time. I will do single arm variations, but I do find that doing skull crushes with dumbbells works quite well for me. But the only downside with doing so many single arm exercises is it's going to double the length of the time taken to do the exercise itself. So if you are constrained with time, then obviously you need to take this into account and make sure that you can actually get everything done which is needed to be done. And the same thing goes with triceps, like I mentioned with biceps. You are still going to see me doing exercises which you could argue, oh, that's not technically the most efficient way or safest way to be training your triceps. But for me, like I said, I don't have currently any elbow issues. I don't lift outrageously heavy weight, and my form is slow and controlled. And instead of just sticking to 3 to 4 tricep exercises, I am going to add a little bit more variety to it to, again, build the overall strength and aesthetics of my arm as a whole. And I want that variety to be able to stimulate as many tricep muscle fibers as possible to ensure that I'm not potentially neglecting any by just sticking to the same exercises with the same grips over and over again. So with that being said, as I'm getting older and I'm learning a little bit more, I'm starting to phase out the exercises which generally just don't feel that great. So in my last video, you saw me doing a tricep press down with a straight bar attachment. You can see how much my elbows are flaring when I do this. And when I do this exercise, I do feel it being quite awkward. I feel more tension on the elbow joint, and I do feel like my shoulders are creeping forward and my chest is almost trying to push the weight down. It just doesn't really feel that natural. So from now on, an exercise like this, I'm really not going to do that often. And since we're talking about arms, we may as well talk a little bit more about elbow injury. If you are the type of person that is suffering from elbow injury, one of the best things you can do is just rest, okay? So take a bit of time out from direct bicep and tricep training or whatever exercises cause discomfort. There's 2 times in my training career where I've just literally had to leave out bicep training for 4 to 6 weeks. Very frustrating, but it's something which has just had to be done, and it has tended to fix itself, right? The causes can vary. There was one time I was actually doing an arm wrestle that completely destroyed my elbow, no surprises there. And there was another time where I was just doing a variation of a lateral raise where I was going through this range of motion, and I do believe that holding a heavy dumbbell and doing this didn't do my elbow very good, which obviously makes sense after everything I've talked about in this video. So that is the video, guys. Hopefully you can take a few of those tips and implement them into your own arm training. Don't forget to check out my training programs on my website, www.mikethurston.co.uk. If you've got any questions, just write it below. I'll try my best to get back to you. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in a bit.